Two princesses fought over him, but he was hiding something from them both. If they learn why I crossed the border, my father will burn every human settlement between here and the river. The wounded orc woman stood beneath the broken arch of an abandoned shrine while freezing rain washed blood down her yellow skin. One hand pressed a deep cut beneath her ribs. The other held a curved black sword steady, though her fingers had begun to tremble. Hooves thundered through the forest behind her. The human approaching wore no armor and carried no visible rank. Only a leather satchel filled with maps, treaty papers, ink and medicine marked him as a traveling scholar. He stopped beyond her blade and addressed her in flawless, high Orcish. Most humans could barely pronounce a clan greeting. This man spoke like someone raised inside a royal court. He warned that the riders would reach them within minutes, then stepped forward to examine her wound: golden skin, master-made armor, a scratched sunblood emblem. He already suspected she was Princess Zareka, daughter of the Orc King. Then she noticed the sealed royal letter inside his satchel. The quiet scholar was hiding something too. Neither knew another princess was already riding toward the valley, determined to claim him before the truth came out. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from and which princess you believe Lucan should trust. Subscribe to Orc Saga and stay with us as hidden crowns, forbidden love, and two rival kingdoms collide. The human called himself Lucan Vale. That name appeared in border petitions, prisoner exchanges, grazing settlements, and trade. Agreements between people who usually trusted one another only slightly more than they feared war. To Greyhaven's farmers, Lucan was the scholar who charged less than royal lawyers and listened longer than local lords. To human guards, he was an irritating civilian who understood military law well enough to stop unlawful arrests. To orc traders, he was one of the few humans who knew that direct speech did not always mean aggression. Lucan was 31 years old and lived near the river Sorin, 6 miles from the disputed border between the human kingdom of Asteron and the orc realm of Varokh. His narrow stone house stood between a pine-covered hill and an old road used by merchants, soldiers, shepherds, smugglers, and refugees. Half the building served as his home. The other half had become an unofficial court. 3 chairs stood beside the central table. One was made for humans, one had been reinforced for larger orc visitors. The third had no back, because Northern Mountain. Clans considered leaning during negotiations, a sign that a person expected betrayal. Maps covered the western wall. Some had been produced by royal surveyors. Most had been corrected in Lucan's hand. He marked seasonal rivers, burial valleys, ruined watchtowers, grazing routes, old clan roads, human shrines and villages claimed by both kingdoms. Shelves held legal codes in human and orcish languages. A brass kettle remained near the hearth because Lucan had learned that men were less eager to threaten war while holding something warm. His home was modest. Rain entered beside the rear chimney. His table had been built from discarded library boards. His boots had been resoled twice, and the cuffs of his dark coat had begun to fray. Yet everything inside was cared for. Books were wrapped against dampness. Blankets were washed. Ink bottles remained sealed. Behind the house, a narrow herb garden grew beside a stone path wide enough for orc feet. Lucan led the wounded woman away from the shrine through a dry river channel hidden beneath pine branches. She refused to be carried. He had expected that. Instead, he tied his cloak between 2 long branches and made a rough litter. She resisted until her knees failed. The first group of riders passed less than 50 paces away. Lucan pulled her beneath thorn branches and covered the silver edge of her armor with mud. He crouched beside her while rain struck the leaves. She watched him closely. He was afraid. His breathing had changed. One hand remained near the small knife at his belt, but he did not panic. When the riders moved north, she whispered that they were gone. Lucan told her disciplined hunters often sent one man back to watch anyone who emerged too soon. A minute later, a lone horseman returned. He searched the path, found nothing, and disappeared. The woman studied Lucan differently after that. He did not possess a warrior's body. He was lean, with dark brown hair tied loosely behind his head, and grey eyes made tired by years of reading in weak light. Ink stained one finger. A narrow scar marked his jaw. Yet he understood pursuit. He understood patience. He understood fear without obeying it. His understanding of orcs had begun long before he came to Greyhaven. When Lucan was 8, the palace tutors of Asteron taught him that orcs were a problem to be managed. They showed him painted maps covered in red arrows. They spoke of raids, broken treaties, stolen cattle, and villages burned during old wars. In the margins of one history book, an artist had drawn an orc warrior with exaggerated tusks and blood running from his mouth. Lucan stared at the picture until his mother noticed. Queen Mara closed the book and asked what he had learned. He repeated the lesson exactly as his tutor had given it. Orcs valued strength, distrusted reason, and understood only force. His mother said nothing at first. The following morning, she brought him to a quiet room near the palace kitchens. An elderly orc woman waited there under guard. Her name was Braka Sen. She had once served as a clan judge before being taken prisoner during a border uprising. She was broad-shouldered, grey-skinned, and missing the end of one tusk. Lucan had been frightened. Braka saw it immediately. She asked in rough human speech whether the prince feared her teeth or the stories inside his own head. His tutor objected. Queen Mara allowed the question. Braka placed 2 clay cups on the table. One was human-made, narrow and decorated. The other was an orc travel cup, broad and plain. She asked Lucan which was stronger. He chose the orc cup. She dropped both. The human cup struck a cushion hidden beneath the table. The orc cup struck a stone and broke. Braka explained that strength without understanding the ground beneath it was useless. Then she asked why the southern clans had raided Asteron 3 winters earlier. Lucan repeated that they were violent. Braka told him a human lord had dammed the river feeding their winter fields. Lucan looked toward his tutor. The man had not mentioned the dam. That was the first moment Lucan understood that history could be accurate in every sentence and still dishonest in what it refused to include. He began learning Orcish from Braka soon afterward. At first, his pronunciation made her laugh. The common Orcish word for peace differed from the word for a pause between battles by one harsh sound in the throat. Lucan confused them during his first lesson. Braka told him he had just offered her a temporary rest before killing her later. He practiced until his voice hurt. Years later, after discovering Braka had been held without formal judgment, Lucan demanded that the royal council review her case. The ministers dismissed him as a compassionate child. Then King Aldrin entered the chamber. The same ministers suddenly praised the prince's sense of justice. Braka was released. Lucan remembered both lessons. Language mattered. Titles changed which truths people were willing to hear. Those lessons eventually brought him to Greyhaven. They now helped him keep a Sunblood princess alive. When Lucan and the wounded woman reached his house, her lips had lost their color. He locked the door and placed her on the reinforced guest bed. Even injured, she seemed too large for the human room. Her shoulders nearly touched the narrow doorway. He placed her sword beside the mattress. That surprised her. She asked why he would return a weapon to someone strong enough to kill him with one hand. Lucan answered that frightened strangers became more dangerous when they believed themselves trapped. He heated water and opened a small medicine case. He explained that he was not a healer. Border diplomats simply learned enough to keep witnesses, messengers, and negotiators alive. The wound beneath her ribs was narrow. The dark veins around it were not. Lucan smelled ashroot before touching the skin. He identified stone viper venom mixed with powdered iron. The woman's expression changed. That poison came from only one place, the private armory of the Orc King. Lucan noticed her reaction. She noticed that he noticed. Neither spoke of it. He removed the damaged leather around the wound. A broad mark shaped like a rising sun crossed her shoulder and disappeared beneath the armor at her back. Lucan had seen the mark in forbidden royal histories. Sunblood. Yellow-skinned orcs were rare. Among the southern clans, Sunbloods were believed to descend from Varokh's first queens. A Sunblood warrior hunted with royal poison was not difficult to identify. Princess Zareka, only daughter of King Ghorvak, commander of the southern armies, the woman known as the Golden Blade. Lucan kept his face calm. He told her the poison had to be drawn out before it reached her heart. She asked what the treatment required. He showed her the knife. Lucan offered a folded cloth for her to bite. Zareka dropped it onto the floor. He warned that the alternative was breaking his furniture. She glanced at the reinforced bed. Lucan explained that an orc envoy had destroyed the previous frame merely by sitting down. A faint smile touched her mouth. It vanished when he opened the wound. Zareka's hand closed around the bed frame. Wood creaked. Sweat formed across her forehead, but she made no sound. Lucan worked steadily. When dark blood began to drain, he pressed charcoal paste into the wound and wrapped her ribs. Only after he finished did she turn her face away. Lucan recognized shame. She believed weakness should remain hidden. He handed her water. She drank without thanking him. Among southern clans, spoken gratitude could imply a debt had already been measured. Lucan understood. He told her the room was hers until morning. She asked what price he expected. He said none. Suspicion returned to her face. Zareka explained that shelter created obligation. Food created obligation. A life saved could bind families for generations. Lucan admitted humans also demanded payment. Then he told her his house did not. The answer unsettled her more than the knife had. Lucan moved into the front room and removed the sealed document from his satchel. The wax carried a silver crown beneath a winter tree, the private mark of King Aldrin of Asteron. The letter was addressed to Prince Lucien Aldrin, his true name. His father had sent another request for him to return to court. Lucan had ignored 3 already. He moved toward a loose floorboard beneath his table. Zareka spoke from the doorway. She should not have been standing. One hand pressed her bandaged side. The other held the frame. She asked why a simple scholar carried a king's private seal. Lucan looked at her. She looked at the letter. Both understood the other was lying by omission. Lucan said kings often used scholars when difficult messages had to be delivered quietly. Zareka replied that scholars who lied usually added more detail. He nearly smiled. Then her knees failed. Lucan caught her. Her weight drove him against the wall. One arm wrapped around his shoulders. His hand found her waist, avoiding the wound. Their faces were close. Her breath was hot from fever. His pulse quickened beneath her fingers. Zareka noticed. Lucan helped her back to bed. Near midnight, fever took her. At first, she spoke only names. Reth Hollow, a young scout named Terran. Then the memories became clearer. She saw Reth Hollow before it burned. Children followed her horse through the village, laughing because one of them had tied yellow ribbons around its bridle. An old baker gave her a loaf shaped like a sun. She promised to return after the southern campaign. In the fever, the loaf became black ash in her hands. She begged the baker to take it back. She saw another battlefield 3 years earlier when her father ordered wounded human prisoners left beside a frozen road. Zareka secretly sent blankets after dark. By morning, 2 prisoners had still died. One had been barely 16. In her dream, the boy kept asking why she waited until darkness to become merciful. She had no answer. Then she saw General Korza's children trapped during a border fire. Ghorvak ordered the army to withdraw because the wind had shifted and the settlement no longer held military value. Zareka disobeyed. She entered the burning lower quarter with 6 soldiers and carried Ghorvak's youngest daughter beneath one arm, while smoke stripped the breath from her lungs. The other child was pinned beneath a beam. Zareka held the burning wood long enough for Ghorvak to pull him free. She still carried the scar across her palms. In the fever, the beam never lifted. The children screamed, while her father's voice told her rulers could not stop for every weak life. Zareka fought the blanket around her. Lucan entered and found her trying to rise. He caught her shoulders. She called him Ghorvak and ordered him to take the children through the lower gate. Then she looked directly at Lucan without truly seeing him. She said strength without restraint was only hunger. She begged her father not to make her become like him. Lucan stayed beside her. He cooled her forehead with a damp cloth. When she struck at shadows, he caught her wrists without pinning them painfully. He told her the children were safe. He did not know whether it was true. He said it because some part of her needed to hear it. Toward dawn, Zareka's breathing slowed. She woke up with Lucan seated on the floor beside the bed, his head resting against the wall. For a moment, she watched him sleep, then his eyes opened. He checked her pulse, her hand closed around his wrist. She asked who he served. Lucan told her he served the border. She tightened her grip. He added that he served peace when peace remained possible, and truth when it did not. Zareka studied with him. Then she released him. She said he spoke like a prince. Lucan handed her water. He answered that princes often paid scholars to write convincing words. She did not believe him. The audience already knew she was right. Beneath the loose floorboard lay the signet ring of Asteron's crown prince. Lucan Vale was Prince Lucien Aldrin, firstborn son of King Aldrin and legal heir to the human throne. Only a few people knew where he lived. One of them had watched the house from the far side of the river for years. Greyhaven knew him as an aging caravan guard named Corin Hale. In truth, Sir Corin had protected Lucan since childhood. That morning, Corin saw blue royal banners approaching from the south. Another princess had entered the valley. Princess Evelyne of Caerwyn arrived in Greyhaven with 12 guards, 2 ladies, 3 wagons, a diplomatic secretary, and enough luggage to make the muddy village road appear ashamed of itself. Children ran beside the procession. Farmers stopped working. Greyhaven's mayor emerged in a ceremonial coat that no longer closed over his stomach. Lucan watched from the council house. He had expected a trade delegation. He had not expected a princess. Evelyne stepped from the carriage in a dark blue traveling dress. Her chestnut hair had been arranged simply by court standards, although no village woman could have created the style without assistance. She was 28, graceful, observant, and composed enough to make every movement appear chosen. Her pale green eyes found Lucan before the mayor completed the introduction. She had studied descriptions: dark hair, grey eyes, plain clothing, a scholar's posture. Lucan bowed according to protocol. Evelyne offered her hand. He touched his lips to the air above her glove. She noticed the precision, not intimate, not cold. Her father, King Edric of Caerwyn, had sent her to negotiate access to a new trade road through Asteron's eastern border. That was her official purpose. Her private instruction was more personal. Caerwyn's agents believed Lucan Vale held unusual influence over Asteron's officers, and perhaps even King Aldrin. Evelyne was to discover why. If he could be recruited, she should recruit him. If friendship, money, debt, or attraction worked, better, she had permission to use whichever method proved effective. Evelyne had not objected. She had grown up in a palace where affection and strategy often used the same language. Her mother died when Evelyne was 11. Her father responded by turning his only daughter into a political instrument. She learned to remember the names of ministers' children. She learned when to appear amused and when to appear wounded. She learned how to let powerful men believe her best ideas belonged to them. At 19, she studied grain records for months and helped secure an agreement that saved 2 cities during winter. The council praised her beauty, Her father praised her usefulness. No one mentioned her intelligence. Evelyne learned that people usually noticed the tool they expected to see. So she used beauty when necessary. She used charm when useful. She used calculation because sincere desire held little value in royal negotiations. Lucan represented a challenge. He was not titled, yet officers answered his letters. He was not wealthy, yet merchants altered contracts after meeting him. Royal couriers were occasionally seen near his house, although none entered village records. Evelyne intended to understand him. Their first meeting concerned tolls, bridge repairs, and protection for Caerwyn caravans. Lucan rejected 3 clauses in her proposed agreement. One would allow Caerwyn guards to arrest Orc traders inside Asteron. Another placed road maintenance on poor border villages. A third contained a translation error that changed temporary inspection rights into permanent authority. Evelyne's secretary insisted the wording was standard. Lucan placed the human and orcish versions beside each other and read them aloud. The secretary became quiet. Lucan corrected the language without humiliating him further. Evelyne watched. Power without cruelty. Precision without performance. That interested her. Afterward, she offered Lucan a silver writing case. He returned it. She sent imported wine. He donated it to the village infirmary. She presented a rare book of early border law. He kept that. Evelyne smiled when she heard. She had found the first opening. Her secretary, Master Halwyn, did not share her amusement. He was a narrow-faced man in his 40s who had served Caerwyn's court since before Evelyne came of age. He kept his beard trimmed precisely, his records even more precisely, and his fears hidden beneath professional disapproval. That evening, inside her room at the Greyhaven Inn, Halwyn placed 3 reports beside Evelyne's dinner. The first contained copies of Lucan's correspondence with Asteron officers. The second listed royal couriers are seen near his house. The third recorded that Lucan had once corrected a military boundary order before the provincial commander received the official version. Halwyn said the scholar was either the most trusted commoner in Asteron or not a commoner at all. Evelyne asked whether he believed Lucan was a royal spy. Halwyn said a spy would be easier. He lowered his voice. If Lucan carried royal blood, then every attempt to charm or recruit him could be interpreted as an attack on Asteron's succession. If he were close enough to the crown to command officers privately, he could destroy Caerwyn's position without ever raising his voice. Evelyne looked toward the rare treaty book Lucan had accepted. She asked whether Halwyn was advising her to withdraw. He said he was advising her not to confuse fascination with control. A man who understood every approach she made might be allowing her to continue because he wanted to learn her purpose. The warning unsettled her. Not because she feared Lucan would expose her, because part of her enjoyed the thought that he might see through her completely. She told Halwyn to continue investigating, but not to bribe Greyhaven villagers or enter Lucan's house. Halwyn asked why she was protecting a stranger's privacy. Evelyne answered that crude methods produced crude truths. She did not admit that she wanted Lucan to reveal himself willingly. That evening, Lucan returned home to discover Zareka standing beside his map wall. She had ignored his instruction to remain in bed. Her color had improved, but pain tightened her face whenever she turned. She wore one of Lucan's loose shirts beneath a fur mantle. The human garment strained across her broad shoulders. She held a charcoal pencil. 3 black lines now crossed his map. Lucan asked what she had changed. Zareka pointed toward 3 mountain routes. One had collapsed during spring flooding. Another crossed a burial valley no southern clan would enter with an army. The third had been deliberately marked incorrectly by royal mapmakers to confuse foreign scouts. Lucan studied the corrections. He asked how she knew. Zareka said she had led soldiers through the region. His gaze moved toward the scratched sun emblem beside her armor. She noticed Zareka asked what he believed she was. Lucan answered that she was important enough to be hunted with royal poison and stubborn enough to edit maps while unable to stand properly. She stepped closer. He remained where he was. She accused him of answering direct questions with carefully shaped fog. Lucan said diplomacy was the art of offering enough truth to prevent war before people were ready for all of it. Zareka called that elegant cowardice. Lucan replied that most living diplomats accepted the description. The edge of her mouth moved. Then she noticed Evelyne's rare book on his table. She asked whether human treaties usually arrived with personal gifts. Lucan said the book was relevant. Zareka examined the cover. She said Evelyne had chosen it because she understood what he desired. Jealousy entered before love had fully formed. It was closer to territorial instinct. Zareka had spent her life among warriors who expressed desire through challenge and physical confidence. She had watched Lucan save her without fear. She had heard him speak her language better than many nobles. She wanted him. Trust had not yet caught up with desire. She moved close enough to trap Lucan between her body and the map wall. One hand rose beside his head. She asked whether Evelyne had touched him. Lucan looked at her arm against the wall, then at her face. He asked whether interrogations in Varokh required this much unnecessary closeness. Zareka answered that closeness made lies easier to detect. Lucan could feel the warmth of her body. Her yellow skin appeared golden in the lamplight. Her amber eyes held challenge and pride. Lucan was attracted to her. Pretending otherwise would have been another lie, but attraction was not trust. He stepped beneath her arm. He told her his loyalty would never be decided by intimidation, gratitude, strength, beauty, rank, or desire. Zareka turned. Her pride sharpened. She asked whether he found her undesirable. Lucan said desire was not the problem. Her breathing changed. He continued. His loyalty would belong only to someone who wanted the truth of him, not his body, usefulness, title, or the satisfaction of winning. Zareka noticed the word title. She asked what title she was supposed to desire. Lucan said none. She did not believe him. The rejection affected her more deeply than he expected. In Varokh, powerful women were taught that desire should be direct. Hesitation suggested weakness. A person either claimed what they wanted or proved unworthy of it. Lucan's boundary challenged the culture through which she understood courtship. She moved away. For the first time since arriving, she seemed uncertain. Lucan did not soften the refusal. Respecting a boundary meant allowing discomfort to remain. At that moment, what would you have done in Lucan's place? Would you have trusted the fierce Sunblood princess, or would her possessive desire have made you step away too? That same night, news reached Greyhaven that a grain wagon had disappeared near the northern ridge. A human shepherd had been found tied to a tree beside a warning carved in Orcish, "Pay the southern tax or leave the valley." Lucan travelled to the site with village representatives. Evelyne joined him. He examined the carved symbol. The Orcish grammar was correct. The clan mark was not. Someone had copied the emblem of a southern warband, but reversed the central line. Lucan explained that the attack had likely been staged. Evelyne asked who would benefit. Lucan answered that human lords could use fear to demand soldiers. Orc commanders could justify expansion. Smugglers could empty villages near illegal routes. Kings could unite frightened people by inventing an enemy. Evelyne watched him kneel beside the tree. He read political intentions in damaged bark. She asked where a scholar learned military deception. Lucan said language was only one form of communication. Evelyne replied that he had not answered. He told her King Edric had not sent her merely to discuss toll roads. Their eyes met. Both understood the other more clearly. Neither confessed anything. Back at the house, Zareka listened to Lucan's report. When he described the reversed mark, she became still. King Ghorvak's intelligence chief often placed small errors inside false evidence so loyal officers could identify official deception. The attack was preparation. Her father intended to create violence, blame humans, and invade under the claim of retaliation. Zareka removed the pommel from her sword. Inside lay a tightly rolled strip of treated skin. Lucan opened it across the table. Military orders carried Ghorvak's private mark. 3 human villages were to be attacked. Orc witnesses would be left behind. Human retaliation would justify full war. Lucan read the orders twice. Zareka finally gave him her name. Princess Zareka of Varokh. Sunblood heir, commander of the southern armies, daughter of King Ghorvak. She expected shock. Lucan only asked why her father wanted her dead. The absence of surprise told her he had already known. Anger entered her face. Lucan admitted he had recognized the mark, poison, and armor. She accused him of testing her. He replied that she had hidden her identity while questioning him. They stood across the table, both carrying royal secrets neither had yet earned the right to demand. Lucan gave her part of the truth. King Aldrin trusted him with sensitive border work. Royal couriers came because Lucan had spent years resolving disputes no court official could manage openly. Zareka accepted the explanation because war mattered more than suspicion. They needed another ally. Before Lucan could arrange the meeting, an orc scout appeared at the edge of his garden. The young woman moved, with one arm held close to her side. Blood had dried across her dark green armor. A black feather was tied beneath one shoulder plate. Zareka recognized her immediately. Her name was Raska Thorn. She had served as Zareka's forward scout for 6 years. Raska was smaller than most southern warriors, though still taller than Lucan. A burn scar crossed the left side of her neck. She spoke rarely and remembered every path she traveled once. At Reth Hollow, Raska had disobeyed a retreat order to carry 3 wounded villagers out through a drainage tunnel. Zareka protected her from punishment by claiming the disobedience as her own command. Since then, Raska's loyalty belonged to the princess rather than the crown. Raska dropped to one knee when she saw Zareka alive. The movement reopened the wound in her side. Zareka lifted her personally. For the first time, Lucan saw her touch one of her soldiers without command or distance. Raska reported that General Korza had not joined the rebellion, but he had refused Ghorvak's order to hunt Zareka personally. The king had responded by taking Korza's surviving family into the capital. Several southern officers wanted to defect. They feared their wives, parents, and children would pay the price. Zareka asked whether Raska's own family remained inside Varokh. Raska said her younger brother served in the royal siege crews. The answer passed between them like a shadow. Zareka gave Raska food, a clean bandage, and the reinforced chair. Raska refused the chair until Zareka ordered her to sit as a soldier rather than kneel as a subject. Lucan watched the exchange. Zareka's world no longer consisted only of a cruel father and faceless armies. It contained people who trusted her, people whose families stood on the other side, people who could be forced to fight those they loved. The coming war became more complicated. Lucan invited Princess Evelyne to a secret meeting at the abandoned riverside chapel. Before they left, Corin appeared near the garden wall. To Zareka and Raska, he looked like an aging guard with a weathered coat and tired horse. Lucan greeted him with unusual warmth. Corin reported armed orcs moving through the northern forests. Zareka noticed how he checked doors before speaking. Not like a caravan guard, like a man assigned to protect someone important. She stored the detail beside the king's seal. The mystery around Lucan deepened. The riverside chapel had lost half its roof. Rain entered through broken beams, moss covered the stone altar, and cold wind moved through cracked windows. Lucan arrived first. Zareka came beneath a dark hood, with Raska walking several paces behind her. Evelyne entered with 2 guards and her secretary. The moment Zareka uncovered her face, every human hand moved toward a weapon. Raska's knife appeared before anyone saw her draw it. Lucan stepped between them. He addressed Evelyne in court Asterian, and Zareka in High Orcish, giving identical instructions. No sudden movement, no accusations until the evidence had been read. No one would leave until they understood what happened if they failed. His voice remained quiet. Everyone obeyed. Evelyne noticed Zareka listening to him. Zareka noticed Evelyne doing the same. Lucan placed Ghorvak's invasion orders on the altar. Evelyne read the translation. Her political mind moved quickly. Supporting Zareka could weaken Varokh's current king and create better trade conditions for Caerwyn. Lucan saw the calculation. He warned that their first concern must be civilians. Evelyne answered that relief required money, soldiers, roads, and political agreements. Moral intention without structure saved no one. Zareka agreed. Lucan looked between them. He said political. Structure without moral intention merely organized suffering more efficiently. Neither princess enjoyed being corrected. Both continued listening. War entered every meeting after that. 3 mixed families reached Greyhaven after orc patrols seized their livestock. A wounded clan messenger crossed the river with news that Ghorvak had arrested officers suspected of supporting Zareka. A human patrol disappeared near the eastern woods. One surviving soldier claimed orcs had attacked. Lucan questioned him. His story changed repeatedly. Evelyne's agents later discovered that a human lord had paid the soldier to create evidence supporting military control of the border. Lucan exposed the deception before both communities. The human lord was arrested. The orc clan, whose symbol had been used falsely, sent grain to the victims. For several days, war moved backward. Then Ghorvak burned Reth Hollow. The settlement was almost entirely orc. Its elders had refused to supply soldiers. Survivors reached Greyhaven carrying children, burns, and blackened pieces of homes they could no longer identify. Zareka saw an old woman wearing the beads of Reth Hollow. She left the chapel before Lucan could stop her. The refugees recognized her golden skin. Some bowed, others turned away. One man asked where their princess had been while the king burned his family. Zareka stood without armor or guards. She said she had been hiding in human territory, trying to prevent a larger invasion. The man told her explanations did not rebuild houses. Zareka accepted the words. She helped unload wagons. She carried injured people into the infirmary. Raska worked beside her, directing families by village and checking names against a small leather list. Zareka continued until the bandage beneath her clothes turned red. Lucan found her behind the building at dusk. He saw the blood. Anger rose quickly. He told her she had reopened the wound to appear strong. Zareka answered that her people had lost everything while she recovered in a warm bed. Lucan said guilt did not become useful simply because it caused pain. She turned on him. She accused him of speaking like a man who had never failed anyone. The words struck deeper than she knew. Lucan became quiet. Zareka saw the change. She asked what he carried. He told her about his mother without revealing she had been queen. He was 9 when fever killed her. Physicians filled the room, priests prayed, men outside discussed succession before her body cooled. Lucan remembered holding her hand while everyone spoke as if she had already become history. Power had not saved her. It had only created more people willing to pretend they could. Zareka listened. His memory carried royal shapes even when he removed the title. She asked whether his mother had been important. Lucan said she had been important to him. That answer ended the questions. He rewrapped Zareka's wound behind the infirmary. His fingers moved carefully along her ribs. Earlier, desire returned, but it had changed. She no longer wanted to force surrender from him. She wanted to understand the grief that had taught him gentleness. When he finished, she placed one hand on his shoulder. Among southern clans, the gesture meant a debt acknowledged but not measured. Lucan knew the custom. He covered her hand with his own. Their first intentional touch contained no seduction. It felt more intimate than the wall had. The next crisis came before the refugees had slept one full night. Greyhaven's mayor announced that the village could not house another 300 people. The barns were full. The inn had been converted into an infirmary. The temple floor already held families separated by hanging blankets. Human villagers feared that putting Orc refugees inside their homes would expose children to violence. Orc families refused to sleep inside the abandoned tannery because the building stood beside a human burial yard. Among their southern customs, sleeping near unguarded foreign graves invited spiritual insult. At the same time, the grainmaster reported Greyhaven held only enough flour for 11 days. Fear entered the square faster than any army. Human farmers demanded that refugees move north. Orc survivors accused them of wanting children sent back toward Ghorvak's soldiers. Someone threw a stone. Raska caught the arm of an Orc man reaching for a knife. Evelyne's guards moved toward the human crowd. Zareka stepped forward, ready to command silence. Lucan stopped her. A royal order from an Orc princess might force obedience for 1 hour and deepen resentment for years. He climbed onto an empty wagon. He spoke first in the human language, then repeated every sentence in Orcish. No family would be removed before shelter existed. No private home would be seized. No food would be distributed by species or rank. Then, he asked for one representative from each village household and one from each refugee group. The shouting did not stop immediately. Evelyne understood what he needed. She ordered her secretary to bring Cowin's supply ledgers. Then she removed the blue royal cloak from her shoulders and spread it across the wagon as a working surface. Zareka studied the village layout. She pointed toward the old wool warehouse near the river. The mayor objected that half the roof had collapsed. Zareka said her soldiers could repair it before midnight if human carpenters showed them how the beams were locked together. A farmer protested that the warehouse belonged to his brother. Evelyne opened Caerwyn's emergency fund and offered fair rental rather than royal seizure. The farmer named a price 3 times the building's value. Evelyne looked at the broken roof and reduced the offer by half. The argument might have lasted all night. Lucan asked whether the farmer preferred payment now or a public record showing he had tried to profit from burned children. The man accepted the fair amount. Food remained the harder problem. Evelyne counted the Caerwyn wagons. 2 contained wine, fine cloth, ceremonial silver, and gifts intended for negotiation. She ordered the wine and silver sold in the nearest southern market. The money would purchase oats and dried beans. Master Halwyn warned the objects belonged to King Edric. Evelyne replied that her father had sent them to secure influence. Feeding the border would purchase more influence than decorating a table. Zareka offered the war horses belonging to her absent royal escort. Raska quietly reminded her that only 2 remained. Zareka instead sent Raska to contact sympathetic clan herders beyond the ridge. They would trade sheep for salt and medical cloth. Lucan divided the warehouse into family sections according to cooking customs rather than species. Human families who used open braziers would sleep near the stone wall. Orc families accustomed to shared fires would take the wider center. The burial yard entrance would be screened with timber panels, and an Orc elder would perform a respectful night watch so no clan believed foreign graves had been dishonored. The 3 of them worked until darkness. Zareka carried roof beams with Raska and the village carpenters. Evelyne sat on an overturned crate, calculating portions with Greyhaven women. Lucan moved between groups, translating measurements, customs, arguments, and apologies. At one point, an old human carpenter shouted that an Orc soldier had cut a support beam too short. The soldier insisted the human marks were wrong. Lucan examined the wood. Both measurements were correct. The human had measured from the outer edge. The orc had measured from the locking notch. They changed the joint. The roof stood. Near midnight, fires glowed inside the repaired warehouse. Children slept beneath patched blankets. Human women stirred grain beside orc mothers. No one believed peace had suddenly arrived. But everyone had shelter. Evelyne stood outside with flour on one sleeve. Zareka approached, carrying a broken hammer. For a moment, both looked through the doorway at the families. Evelyne admitted she had expected Zareka to solve the conflict through command. Zareka admitted she had expected Evelyne to throw money at it and leave. Evelyne looked at the repaired roof. Zareka looked at the new grain ledger. Neither apologized for the judgment. They did not need to. Mutual respect had entered before friendship. If you believe real love is proven through sacrifice rather than beauty, power, or royal titles, subscribe to Orc Bond Saga. Stay with us, because the secret Lucan is hiding will soon change the way both princesses see him forever. Later that night, after Lucan left to check the infirmary, Zareka found Evelyne alone beside the river. Mist moved above the dark water. The human princess had removed her gloves and was washing flour from her hands. Zareka stood several steps away. She said Evelyne wanted him. Evelyne did not pretend to be confused. She said Zareka did too. The Orc princess folded her arms. She admitted that when she first saw Lucan, she wanted to test him. When he refused to bend, she wanted to make him bend. She had mistaken resistance for invitation because powerful people rarely denied her openly. Evelyne dried her hands. She admitted she had approached him as an assignment. She selected gifts, clothing, and private moments with the same care she used when negotiating tariffs. Zareka asked whether the confession was meant to make her appear honest now. Evelyne said no. It was meant to prevent them from pretending their jealousy came from noble motives. The directness surprised Zareka. She moved closer to the river. She said she disliked seeing Lucan touch Evelyne. Evelyne admitted that watching him speak softly to Zareka made her feel excluded from a language she could not understand. Zareka asked whether Evelyne intended to compete until he chose. Evelyne looked toward the warehouse. She said competition had already made both of them behave beneath the women they wished to become. If Lucan chose Zareka, Evelyne would be hurt. If he chose her, Zareka would be hurt. Neither pain gave them the right to destroy the other. Zareka considered that. Among her people, rivals often settled courtship through public challenges. She could defeat Evelyne in any physical contest. The knowledge no longer felt useful. She asked whether Evelyne feared her. Evelyne admitted she did. Not because Zareka was an orc. Because Zareka inspired loyalty without needing charm. Zareka said she feared Evelyne too. Evelyne appeared surprised. Zareka explained that the human princess could enter a room where everyone distrusted her and leave with 3 people believing her plan had been their idea. Zareka could break doors. Evelyne could make people open them. For the first time, they laughed together. The sound was quiet and brief. It did not make them friends. It made friendship possible. Evelyne's personal change continued through failure. She invited Lucan to dinner at the inn several nights later. The meal included warm bread, spiced duck, imported pears, and old wine. The arrangement was elegant enough to separate the evening from ordinary negotiation. Lucan recognized the intention. He came because Caerwyn's supplies mattered. Evelyne asked about his relationship with King Uldren. Lucan redirected the discussion toward grain routes. She asked what he wanted for himself. He said an accurate winter inventory. Evelyne moved around the table. Her dress was fitted without becoming improper. A thin chain rested against her skin. Her perfume carried cedar and jasmine. She stopped beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Caerwyn, she explained, could offer land, office, wealth, and a permanent position near her court. Lucan asked whether every useful scholar received a palace. Evelyne replied that political service was only one form of closeness available. The invitation was unmistakable. Lucan removed her hand gently. He said desire did not create trust. Evelyne asked whether he found her unattractive. Lucan answered that attraction did not equal consent to being purchased. The words were not cruel. Their accuracy made them painful. Evelyne returned to her chair. She asked what kind of woman he believed her to be. Lucan told her he did not yet know, because she had shown him only the version sent by her father. The answer followed her after he left. 2 days later, Lucan found her inside Greyhaven's grain store, helping village women move flour sacks. No painter watched. No secretary recorded the work. The strongest labourers had gone to reinforce the northern road, and the grain still needed moving. A rope tore the skin of Evelyne's palm. She hid the injury until Lucan saw blood on the sack. He cleaned her hand in the council house. Evelyne admitted her original mission. Her father wanted Lucan recruited. The gifts, dinner, promises, and physical approach had all served that purpose. Lucan asked why she was telling him now. She said the plan had failed, yet she remained. She had begun caring what he thought, even when his approval gave her no advantage. She no longer wanted to lie. Lucan thanked her for the truth. He did not immediately forgive the manipulation. That mattered. Evelyne was accustomed to men forgiving whatever increased their chance of intimacy. Lucan allowed trust to rebuild slowly. Zareka entered before Evelyne left. Her eyes moved toward Lucan's hands around the princess's bandaged palm. Jealousy sharpened her face. Then she remembered the river conversation. Instead of provoking Evelyne, she asked whether the cut was deep. Evelyne said no. Lucan noticed the restraint in both women. He closed the medicine case and told them the crisis meeting would begin within the hour. The rivalry remained, but the repeated attempts ended there. Zareka no longer cornered Lucan. She began asking, would he walk with her? Would he sit beside the fire? Would he permit her to touch his shoulder? Each request mattered because it showed she had accepted his boundary. Evelyne stopped sending expensive gifts. She brought reports, maps, and difficult questions instead. The women still competed, but less through seduction. Zareka helped correct Lucan's clan language. Evelyne improved his knowledge of court alliances. Zareka brought him a knife, balanced for a human hand. Evelyne found a damaged treaty manuscript and asked him to restore it with her. The war continued moving closer. Ghorvak executed 3 clan elders. 2 commanders defected to Zareka. A third remained loyal because the king held his sons inside the capital. Raska brought the names of 57 soldiers prepared to join if their families could be moved first. General Korza's name appeared on none of the lists, yet beside one message, a small mark had been drawn in charcoal. A lower gate. Zareka recognized it. Years earlier, after she rescued Korza's children from the border fire, the general told her that if she ever needed a path through a closed wall, she should mark the message with a lower gate. He had not joined her, but he had not abandoned her either. A captured rebel officer brought news that Ghorvak's armies were gathering near Iron Pass. Lucan began building a network of appeals. To warriors, he described the dishonor of using royal poison against a Sunblood heir. To merchants, he calculated the destruction war would bring to roads and iron exports. To spiritual elders, he cited old laws declaring kings who murdered kin without judgment had lost sacred authority. Evelyne supplied money and couriers. Zareka supplied names, customs, and hidden routes. Raska carried the most dangerous messages herself. The 4 of them became effective because they were different. Lucan prevented language from becoming a weapon. Evelyne understood leverage. Zareka understood honor. Raska knew which roads remained real after maps became lies. Their feelings developed inside the work rather than replacing it. Lucan watched Evelyne surrender a valuable trade advantage to keep grain affordable for refugees. He saw Zareka refuse a command tent and sleep beside ordinary soldiers. Evelyne watched Lucan spend an entire night translating the names of missing orc children for human search parties. Zareka watched him confront an Asteron captain who had beaten orc prisoners. The captain warned Lucan to remember his station. Lucan answered that law did not become optional because the victim was unpopular. The captain withdrew. Zareka realized then that she loved him, not because he resisted her, not because he spoke her language, because his courage did not require an audience. Evelyne realized her feelings during a fever outbreak at the refugee camp. Lucan became ill after refusing to rest. Zareka remained beside him the first night. Evelyne took the second. Lucan spoke fragments in his sleep, a palace garden, a silver crown. His mother calls him Lucien. Evelyne heard the name. It meant little by itself. She did not immediately connect it to Asteron's missing heir. Lucien was uncommon, but not unique, and fever often pulled old names from memory. Over the following weeks, she noticed other details. Royal couriers visited after dark. Senior officers read Lucan's notes with unusual care. He understood palace security procedures and military codes beyond ordinary diplomatic training. She discussed the clues once with Master Halwyn. The secretary suggested Lucan might be an illegitimate royal cousin, a former palace clerk, or an intelligence officer educated beside nobles. Evelyne did not solve the mystery. She only understood that he was closer to the royal household than he admitted. Corin appeared more frequently as the danger grew. Lucan introduced him as an old family friend and traveling guard. Zareka saw the way Corin checked doors before sitting. Evelyne noticed he never turned his back on Lucan in a crowded room. Neither woman knew the full truth. Corin brought news that King Aldrin had quietly begun moving supplies, engineers, and reserve companies toward the eastern province. Not a full army, not yet. The king required clear evidence of invasion before crossing the border in force. Lucan refused to reveal himself merely to accelerate military support. He believed premature intervention would allow Ghorvak to frame Zareka's rebellion as human conquest. His reasoning was sound. His pride remained hidden inside it. He still wanted his work to matter before his title did. That flaw would soon cost them. The truth emerged at Iron Ford. Lucan arranged a peace conference with 3 neutral clan elders, 2 Asteron officers, Evelyne, Zareka, and an envoy sent by Ghorvak. The meeting platform stood above the river. No delegation could bring more than 12 guards. Weapons were forbidden inside the central circle. Ghorvak sent General Morgan. Morgan had served the royal family for 30 years. He had trained Zareka when she was young. The first weapon he placed in her hands was not a sword, but a wooden staff taller than she was. Zareka was 10. She attacked him with all the strength expected from a Sunblood heir. Morgan stepped aside. She fell face first into the training dust. The watching officers laughed. Morgan did not. He helped her stand and told her power was not proved by striking hardest. It was proved by understanding what remained after the strike missed. Years later, during her first command exercise, Zareka ordered a direct charge across an open field. Morgan refused to move the training soldiers. She accused him of disobedience. He pointed toward the wet ground and asked what she smelled. Rain. The field concealed a shallow marsh. An actual army would have lost horses and men before reaching the enemy. Morgan made her walk through the mud in full armor. He said, humiliation. Survived longer than bruises and therefore taught better lessons. Zareka hated him for one afternoon and trusted him for the next 15 years. When Queen Asha died, Morgan became one of the few adults who spoke to Zareka as a child rather than an heir. He brought food after long council sessions. He corrected her without flattery. When an arrow killed her horse during the Western Rebellion, Morgan carried her nearly a mile while blood filled one of his boots. That was the man who entered Iron Ford, wearing a fresh iron band around his wrist. Zareka recognized the band. Ghorvak placed such restraints on officers whose families had been taken into royal custody. Morgan's wife and 2 sons were hostages. That was why he had come. Before the formal discussion began, he avoided Zareka's eyes. For one moment, memory returned to her. The wooden staff, the training dust. Morgan told her to understand what remained after a missed strike. Now, his own hand trembled beneath his sleeve. Ghorvak offered pardon if she returned. Her command would be restored. She could even select which human settlements received mercy. In exchange, she must marry Warlord Kazug, surrender rebel commanders, and publicly accuse Lucan of manipulating her. Zareka refused. Morgan's shoulders lowered. He looked toward the river, then toward the guards stationed beyond the circle. Lucan saw the man's hand move toward his sleeve. Not quickly, reluctantly, Corin stepped closer. Morgan removed a concealed knife. For one heartbeat, he hesitated. His eyes met Zareka's. She saw an apology there, then fear. Then the desperate face of a father imagining his sons dying because he had failed. Morgan attacked Lucan. Corin intercepted the strike. The struggle tore Lucan's collar. A gold chain fell free. The crown prince's signet ring struck the stone. Morgan saw it. Evelyne recognized the seal. Zareka understood the reaction around her. One Astron officer dropped to a knee, then the other. They addressed Lucan as Prince Lucian Aldrin, firstborn son of King Aldrin and legal heir to Astron. The title struck harder than the blade. Evelyne stepped back. Every gift and calculated gesture returned to her memory. She had offered land and influence to a man who could inherit a kingdom. Humiliation came first. Then it hurt. She had begun loving him after abandoning calculation. Now she wondered whether he had watched her change as part of a private test. Zareka's anger came faster. She asked how long he intended to let her believe he was merely a scholar. Lucan said he had lived under that name for 7 years. She asked whether his principle had been a trial designed for women like them. Would they desire the man or the title? Lucan denied targeting them. But he could not deny the deeper truth. He had hidden his identity to learn whether anyone valued him without the crown. Evelyne understood. She told him he had demanded honesty while withholding the truth needed for informed love. Lucan accepted the accusation. Zareka said he had judged her possessiveness while controlling the greatest secret between them. He accepted that too. Now that the truth was finally exposed, who had the greater right to feel betrayed? Zareka, who had offered him her growing trust, or Evelyne, who had abandoned her political plan and begun loving the man she believed was only a scholar? Morgan lay wounded nearby. Corin's blade had entered beneath his ribs. Zareka knelt beside her old teacher. For a moment she was 10 again, covered in training dust and waiting for him to tell her how she had failed. Morgan tried to speak formally. Blood interrupted him. Zareka told him to stop wasting breath on titles. He admitted Ghorvak ordered the assassination. His wife and sons were held beneath the eastern tower. If Lucan lived, Ghorvak promised they would die before sunset. Zareka asked why Morgan had not warned her through the lower gate mark. He said every message had been watched. He had hoped he could miss. The confession broke something inside her. The man who taught her to understand failed strikes had attempted to turn his own attack into one. Corin had moved too quickly. Morgan caught Zareka's wrist. He asked her to save his family. She promised she would try. He asked whether she remembered the marsh field. Zareka said she did. Morgan told her the kingdom had become that field, solid from a distance, rotten beneath the surface. Then he died with his hand around hers. The peace conference ended. Neutral elders left under guard. Zareka rode north with her commanders. Evelyne returned to Greyhaven without speaking to Lucan. Corin told him what no loyal servant usually dared say. Hiding had once protected Lucan from false affection. Now it protected him from vulnerability. Lucan had wanted to be loved as a man rather than a prince. He had forgotten that love required allowing another person to see the whole man. Ghorvak attacked 3 days later. The first strike hit the eastern supply road. The second targeted the refugee camp. The third came through the northern forest, where false reports had left a gap. The defenders expected war. They had simply expected another week. Ghorvak's intelligence chief intercepted a rebel message and advanced the invasion. The human side weakened quickly. Asteron's main army waited beyond the southern hills. King Aldrin had moved troops through Corrin's reports, but he had not yet received undeniable proof that Ghorvak's royal army had crossed the recognized border. Lucan could summon him with the signet. He hesitated. If Asteron crossed too early, neutral Orc clans might unite against human occupation. Zareka found him staring at the ring inside the chapel command room. Their anger remained. So did their love. She asked why he had not sent the command. Lucan explained the danger. Zareka struck the table. She told him people were already living inside the war he feared creating. The words ended his hesitation. Lucan gave the signet to Corrin. Corrin rode south with 2 escorts. The message would not bring an army within minutes. Aldrin's forces were 30 miles away. They had to gather, cross muddy passes, and survive ambush. The earliest arrival would be late the following day, if the roads held, if Corrin survived. If the army moved without rest. Until then, Greyhaven stood alone. Lucan began rebuilding trust through action. He gave Zareka access to every military message, including letters addressed to the Crown Prince. He allowed Evelyne to read his correspondence with King Aldrin. Neither woman forgave him immediately. That made their eventual forgiveness believable. Evelyne burned her father's latest instruction, ordering her to secure marriage with Lucan before Asteron's court intervened. She showed him the ashes. She said she had approached the scholar through strategy. She would not approach the prince the same way. She would remain, because Greyhaven needed Kerwin's supplies and because Zareka's cause was just. Whether Lucan trusted her again would remain separate. Zareka made a similar choice. She fought beside him without asking what place she held in his future. For the first time, both princesses chose the cause without expecting to win him. That was when Lucan began trusting their love. Greyhaven survived the first assault by turning familiar streets into defenses. Lucan knew every lane, cellar, drainage ditch, stable entrance, and garden wall. Carts blocked cavalry routes. Millstones rolled down the northern slope. Archers fired from the grain house. Rebel orcs used clan horns to create false retreat signals. Evelyne directed the evacuation. She divided civilians according to speed, injury, and family size. Gerwin guards held the river crossing. Nobles were not allowed to pass before refugee children. Zareka commanded the front line. She fought beneath the Sunblood banner, so uncertain Orc soldiers could see that she lived. Raska stayed near her, carrying orders between units when horns could not be trusted. One enemy company defected, another withdrew without joining either side. A royal unit remained loyal and killed rebels attempting to surrender. The conflict stayed fractured and costly. By nightfall, Greyhaven still stood. The northern quarter had fallen. Asteron's army had not arrived. Corrin's messenger reported a landslide at the southern pass. King Aldrin's forces were rerouting through an old quarry road. They would reach Greyhaven the next afternoon at the earliest. Ghorvak planned another attack at dawn. Lucan spent the night among the wounded. Zareka found him washing blood from his hands beside the river. She had removed her helmet. A cut crossed her cheek. Her golden skin looked pale beneath dirt and exhaustion. She sat beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she told him she had loved Lucan Vale, the scholar who refused to be owned, the man who corrected her maps and treated poison with hands that shook only after danger passed. Learning he was a prince had not erased that man. It had revealed another chamber he had kept locked. Lucan apologized. He told her he had feared the truth would change every look and touch between them. Zareka said it would have changed them. Love was not the absence of change. It was deciding what remained after truth entered. She made her offer beside the river. If they survived, she would ask him to join his life with hers under Sunblood law. She would not demand his throne. She would not claim Asteron. She would not force him to choose immediately. If he refused, she would still protect the border and fight beside him. Her love would not become punishment. Lucan touched the scar above her eyebrow. He admitted he loved her. Zareka closed her eyes. He then told her that he also cared deeply for Evelyne and did not know what future remained possible. Pain entered Zareka's expression. She did not hide it. She said honesty hurt less than possession, disguised as devotion. Lucan kissed her. The kiss was slow and restrained. It carried no promise beyond the truth of the moment. Zareka's hands settled at his waist, but waited until he moved closer. When they separated, she rested her forehead against his. Neither knew it would be their only kiss. Evelyne found Lucan near dawn. She carried casualty reports and a message from her father. Cerwyn would send more troops only if Lucan publicly agreed to a marriage alliance. Evelyne tore the message apart. She told Lucan she once believed politics and love could share the same bargain. Now she understood that using affection as leverage damaged both. She would not ask him to marry her for soldiers. The Cerwyn companies under her direct command would remain. Her father might disinherit her. Lucan asked whether she was prepared. Evelyne admitted she was afraid, not of poverty, of becoming useless in the eyes of the parent whose approval had shaped her life. Lucan understood. He had spent years escaping the same kind of royal judgment. He took her hand. Evelyne told him she loved him. She did not demand an answer. She loved the scholar and the prince, although she remained angry with both. Lucan almost laughed. Instead, he pressed her fingers to his forehead. Both women had become capable of love without ownership. That made the choice meaningful. War did not allow him to make it safely. King Aldrin reached Greyhaven shortly before the defenders withdrew north. His army did not arrive in shining formation. The quarry road had covered soldiers and horses in pale dust. One supply wagon had broken an axle. Several men marched with cloth wrapped around bleeding feet. Lucan saw the royal banner from the chapel tower. For one moment, he became a child again. His father dismounted near the burned grain house. King Aldrin was 58, broad through the shoulders, his dark hair now streaked with grey. He wore battle armor without ceremonial gold. He looked older than when Lucan last saw him, not weaker, more tired. Soldiers and villagers bowed. Lucan did not. Aldrin dismissed the guards from the ruined chapel room. Corin remained outside the door. Father and son stood alone among broken benches and the smell of smoke. Aldrin looked at Lucan's frayed coat beneath the light armor. He asked whether 7 years had taught him what he wanted to know. Lucan said they had taught him that people treated a prince differently the moment they discovered the title. Aldrin replied that he had known that before Lucan left. Lucan said knowing the truth from a palace window was different from living inside it. Aldrin accepted the rebuke. He looked toward the doorway where wounded villagers passed. Then he admitted he had nearly ordered Lucan home more than once. Lucan asked why he had not. Aldrin said Queen Mara believed their son needed to become a man before becoming a symbol. Aldrin promised her he would allow it, though keeping the promise often felt like abandoning him. Lucan's anger shifted. For years, he imagined his father understood only succession. Now he saw fear beneath the king's control. Aldrin asked why Lucan delayed sending the signet when the invasion began. Lucan explained the neutral clans, the danger of human occupation, and Ghorvak's propaganda. Aldrin listened. Then he asked, what part of the delay had been strategy, and what part had been pride? The question struck because it came from the only man whose pride Lucan had spent his life resisting. Lucan admitted he wanted the border to trust his work before learning his blood. Aldrin said worthy work did not become less worthy because a prince performed it. Lucan answered that people often stopped seeing the work once they saw the crown. His father moved closer. He said Lucan could not control which part of him people noticed first. He could only make certain the crown never became the only part worth noticing. Silence remained between them. Lucan asked whether Aldrin had come as king or father. Aldrin said he brought an army as king. Then he placed one hand on Lucan's shoulder. He crossed the quarry road as a father. Lucan's throat tightened. Aldrin admitted he feared arriving too late. Lucan looked toward the northern road, where Zareka's Sunblood banner waited beside Evelyne's blue standard. He said they were not finished yet. Aldrin asked whether the Orc Princess mattered to him. Lucan answered yes. The king asked about Evelyne. Lucan answered yes again. Aldrin almost smiled despite the war. He said Lucan had chosen a complicated method of testing whether anyone loved him for himself. Lucan replied that he had begun to notice. Before leaving, Aldrin removed his royal cloak and placed it around the shoulders of a shivering refugee child outside the chapel. Lucan watched. For the first time in years, he remembered that the king had once been the man his mother loved. Their reconciliation was incomplete. But it had begun. Ghorvak withdrew toward Blackstone Field. The final confrontation waited beneath the walls of Varokh's old capital. Blackstone Field had been used for coronations, executions, and military oaths. Ancient pillars marked its edges. Each carried the carved name of a dead king. Ghorvak prepared the ground carefully. Prisoners were chained near the eastern wall. A single corridor appeared to provide a rescue route. Above it, an old stone barrier remained suspended by rusted counterweights. A heavy siege engine had been positioned on the western ridge, with a clear line toward the corridor. Scouts confirmed the trap. Ghorvak intended rescuers, prisoners, and civilians to gather in the narrow passage. Then he would fire into them. The stone barrier could stop the bolt if lowered. Its release lever stood on an exposed platform near the central pillar. Reaching it during battle would be nearly impossible. Lucan's engineers began digging an alternate route through the southern embankment. Ghorvak discovered the attempt and flooded the trench from an old reservoir channel. The safer path disappeared. The final strategy had only 3 objectives. Zareka would hold the center and confront Ghorvak. Evelyne would protect the evacuation corridor. Lucan would free the prisoners. Raska would move between Zareka's central force and Evelyne's corridor, carrying signals if horns failed. King Aldrin's army had reached the southern ridge after traveling through the quarry road, but men and horses were exhausted. They needed time to form. Ghorvak gave them none. At sunrise, he ordered 20 prisoners executed. Zareka rode onto the field beneath a white banner. She challenged her father before both armies. Ghorvak appeared on the central platform wearing black armor and an iron tusk crown. He called rebel clans oath-breakers. He claimed Lucan intended to place Varokh beneath human rule. Zareka listed his crimes. Royal poison used against his heir. Reth Hollow burned. Clan elders executed without judgment. Children held as hostages. Soldiers ordered to kill civilians. Copies of the evidence had already been distributed among enemy units. The soldiers were not hearing accusations for the first time. Some had received messages from their families. Some had seen villages burn. The fracture already existed. Zareka widened it. One enemy captain led his company away from the field. Ghorvak ordered archers to kill them. Another royal company refused. Fighting began inside his own flank. Some soldiers defected, some withdrew. Others remained loyal because their families were held inside the city. Hardcore royal troops continued fighting. Evelyne led the first charge along the eastern side. Her cavalry struck enemy riders near the prisoner corridor and pulled back. Royal cavalry followed. Hidden Kerwin archers rose from shallow trenches and fired into their path. The eastern flank opened. Zareka's rebels advanced through the center. Lucan moved toward the prisoners with Asteron infantry and Orc scouts. He wore light armor over his scholar's coat. The Crown Prince's banner rose behind him. Some human soldiers cheered. Several Orc units hesitated, fearing conquest. Lucan ordered the royal banner lowered. The rescue team would advance beneath white cloth instead. King Aldrin watched from the ridge. His son had not rejected the crown. He had learned when not to place it at the center. The prisoners were chained to iron posts. Lucan carried engineering notes from old Varokh archives. He showed soldiers where to strike the locking pins. The first chain fell. Evelyne's riders formed a moving shield around the corridor. The siege crew turned the engine. Asteron archers fired. Several crewmen fell. Others remained protected behind stone screens. The first iron bolt crossed the field. It struck beside the prisoners, throwing bodies and dirt into the air. Lucan ordered everyone forward. The corridor filled. Zareka saw the danger while fighting through the center. Too many civilians, too few shields. The siege engine began loading again. Lucan sent 3 soldiers toward the release platform. Archers killed the first. The second reached the stairs and fell beneath a spear. The third climbed halfway before a royal guard cut him down. The rescue had failed. The second bolt fired. Evelyne saw it first. She drove her horse toward a group of children and pulled them behind broken stone. The projectile struck a cart and tore through 2 soldiers. Panic spread. Lucan climbed onto the ruined cart and gave orders in both languages. Move by family groups. Keep the wounded inside the shield line. Do not run toward the wall. His voice restored enough order to continue. Raska reached the corridor, carrying Zareka's order to tighten the center. Then she saw the siege crew loading the third bolt. One engineer working the weapon removed his helmet. Raska froze. Her younger brother Varokh stood beside the winding chain. He saw her at the same moment. For years, Varokh served the crown because their mother depended on his military ration. He had not joined Zareka's rebellion. Raska believed he feared dishonor. Now she saw an iron band around his wrist. His family had been used against him too. Varokh looked toward the children in the corridor, then toward the officer commanding the siege crew. The officer ordered him to release the locking rope. Varokh refused. The officer drew a blade. Raska ran up the ridge. She could not reach him in time. Varokh seized the officer and pulled him away from the mechanism. Another royal soldier drove a spear into Varokh's side. Raska reached the stone screen and killed the spearman. She caught her brother as he fell. Varokh apologized, not for serving Ghorvak, for believing he had no choice. Raska pressed one hand over the wound. Blood passed between her fingers. Varokh told her the third bolt was already locked. The engine could still fire from the lower release. He gave her the iron key used to open the maintenance gate beneath the platform. Then his body became heavy in her arms. Raska lowered her forehead to his. The battle moved around them. She wanted to remain. Instead, she rose. She carried the key toward Lucan's position. That was the choice Zareka had taught her. Grief did not excuse abandoning the living. Raska reached Lucan and gave him the key, but the maintenance route had collapsed beneath the first impact. The release platform remained the only solution. At the center, Ghorvak entered the battle himself. Father and daughter met beneath the largest pillar. Ghorvak fought through strength. Zareka fought through speed and knowledge. She had trained against him since childhood. She knew he shifted his left foot before a downward strike. She knew his damaged shoulder slowed the return of his axe. She cut his thigh. He broke her shield. He accused her of betraying blood. She answered that blood did not excuse cruelty. Zareka drove him back against the pillar. His axe fell from one hand. She raised her sword. For the first time, she had a clear opening to kill him. Then the siege crew released the locking rope. The third and largest bolt began moving. Ghorvak had not planned the exact second to create a moral choice for his daughter. The engine crew had been ordered before battle to fire whenever the corridor reached maximum density. A signal flag rose from the eastern wall. The timing came from military preparation, not chance. Zareka looked toward the corridor. Lucan stood among the prisoners. Evelyne held the outer shield line. Hundreds were trapped beneath the engine's path. There were only seconds. Zareka did not spare her father from weakness. She made a tactical choice. Kill Ghorvak now, or save the people his weapon was about to destroy. She turned toward the platform. Ghorvak struck from behind. The axe tore through her shoulder armor and opened a deep wound. Zareka stumbled. Lucan saw her. He shouted her name. She regained her feet and ran. She used a fallen shield to cross the open ground. She cut one guard at the stairs. She disarmed another and threw him from the platform. The siege arm continued drawing back. Zareka reached the lever. It had rusted inside its stone housing. She pulled. Nothing happened. Ghorvak climbed the platform behind her. He demanded she release the lever and allow the humans to die. Zareka looked toward the corridor. Human and orc children moved together beneath the shields. She told him they were not targets. They were her people. Ghorvak attacked. Zareka blocked with one arm. The impact drove her into the mechanism. She struck his injured leg and forced him to the ground. Then she wrapped both hands around the lever. Metal tore through her palms. She planted one boot against the stone. She pulled with everything left in her body. The mechanism shifted. Ancient gears groaned. The barrier began descending. The siege engine fired. Lucan watched the iron bolt cross the field. The stone wall fell into place between the projectile and the corridor. The bolt struck. The impact cracked the platform. Stone and timber collapsed around Zareka. Ghorvak rolled clear. She disappeared beneath the mechanism. The corridor survived. Hundreds lived. Lucan reached the rubble while battle continued. Evelyne arrived seconds later. Raska came behind her with her brother's blood still covering her hands. Soldiers lifted beams and removed stone. They found Zareka beneath the central support. The slab had crushed the lower edge of her armor. Blood spread beneath her. Lucan dropped beside her. He tried to lift the stone. It did not move. More soldiers joined. Zareka stopped them. The pressure was slowing the bleeding. Removing the slab would end her life immediately. Lucan refused the truth. He called for engineers. He demanded ropes. Zareka caught his sleeve. Her fingers were covered in blood. She reminded him that loyalty could not be taken. Lucan told her not to turn sacrifice into another form of command. A faint smile touched her mouth. She said that sounded like a scholar. Evelyne knelt on the other side. Her face had lost all royal composure. Zareka looked at her former rival. She asked Evelyne to protect the border before protecting any crown. Evelyne promised. Zareka warned that Lucan would hide inside duty whenever grief frightened him. She asked Evelyne not to let him disappear there. Evelyne gripped her hand. She promised, again. Zareka found Raska behind them. The scout dropped to her knees. She told the princess that Varokh had died stopping the siege officer. Zareka closed her eyes briefly. She said Raska's brother died as a free warrior, not Ghorvak's servant. Raska pressed Zareka's bloody hand against her forehead. She promised the Sunblood banner would not fall while she lived. Lucan leaned closer. He pressed his forehead against Zareka's. He told her he loved her, no title, no test, no hesitation. Zareka closed her eyes. She admitted she once wanted to own him. Then he taught her that love was strongest when it left the other person free. Her thumb moved weakly across his cheek. She told him to remain free. Her final breath left slowly. Her hand remained against his face after life left it. Lucan did not move. For several heartbeats, the battle disappeared. Sound narrowed into a dull pressure inside his skull. His hands began shaking, not slightly, violently. He tried to say Zareka's name again, but no voice came. His chest pulled for air and found none. He had watched soldiers die. He had held his mother's hand through her final breath. He believed he understood grief. This was different. This felt as though the world struck him without leaving a visible wound. He pressed one hand against his mouth. A broken sound escaped anyway. Evelyne reached toward him, then stopped. She allowed him the moment without trying to control it. Raska bowed over Zareka's body. Lucan looked at the golden skin, already losing warmth beneath his fingers. He remembered the wall in his house, the repaired maps, the river kisses, the way she learned to ask before touching him. He wanted to remain beside her until the field emptied. Then children cried inside the corridor. Zareka died to keep them alive. Remaining silent forever would turn her sacrifice into an ending instead of a choice. Lucan placed her hand carefully over her heart. He tried to stand. His knees failed once. Raska caught his arm. He rose again. Ghorvak appeared on the far side of the ruined platform. He called for loyal soldiers to finish the prisoners. Few answered. The commanders had seen Zareka choose civilians over victory. They had seen Ghorvak fire into his own people. Lucan faced the field. His first words came out hoarse. He stopped, breathed, then spoke again in High Orcish. He pointed toward Zareka beneath the stone. She had died protecting humans, orcs, loyalists, rebels, prisoners, and children. He asked, what? Honor remained in defending the man who ordered all of them killed. One commander lowered his sword, another refused and attacked him. His own soldiers stopped him. 2 companies withdrew. 3 surrendered. Ghorvak's personal guard continued fighting. King Aldrin's army descended from the southern ridge. Their arrival did not end the battle instantly. They reinforced weakened lines, secured the siege ridge, and blocked retreat. Hardcore loyalists fought until evening. Ghorvak attempted to flee into the city. General Korza waited at the lower gate. For years, he remained trapped between loyalty to Varokh and loyalty to the princess who saved his children. Now the gate mark he once promised Zareka became real. He opened the passage for rebel soldiers. When Ghorvak reached it, Korza blocked the way. The king ordered him aside. Korza removed the royal insignia from his armor. He said the crown abandoned Varokh before Varokh abandoned the crown. Then he arrested Ghorvak with the help of his own soldiers. The war ended through exhaustion, defection, military pressure, evidence, and Zareka's sacrifice. Not through one speech. Ghorvak faced judgment before a mixed council. He was stripped of crown, clan, command, and name. He died in prison months later without banners. Zareka was carried from Blackstone Field beneath both human and orc standards. Raska walked before the body carrying the black and gold Sunblood banner. No song called Zareka helpless. No memorial described her as a victim. She became the Sunblood Shield, the princess who stood against her father, the commander who chose civilians over a throne. Peace demanded more patience than victory. Varokh had lost its king and rightful heir. Human nobles demanded land. Loyalist clans feared punishment. Gerwin merchants expected repayment. Refugees wanted homes before rulers discussed borders. King Aldrin offered to step down. Lucan refused the crown for the time being. He said grief had made him certain of too many things that required patience. Asteron did not need a king making permanent choices while still hearing Zareka's final breath. He remained at the border for another year. This time he lived openly. The revelation changed how people treated him. Villagers bowed where they once argued. Officials praised ideas they had previously ignored. Lucan disliked the change. He no longer ran from it. He learned that hiding a title could not force honesty from the world. It only delayed the moment when honesty had to survive power. He kept both names in his official signature, Prince Lucian Aldrin, called Lucan Vale. The scholar and heir became one man. Varokh formed a ruling council. General Korza represented the army. Village elders represented common clans. Merchants, spiritual judges, and refugee leaders received seats. The Sunblood throne remained empty. Zareka's damaged armor was placed above the council entrance. It was never repaired. Children were taught why. Several months after Blackstone, Lucan traveled to Varokh's southern fortress. He entered without a royal procession. Raska met him at the outer gate. The burn scar on her neck had healed badly after the battle. Her brother's iron key now hung from a cord at her waist. She had been promoted to captain of the Sunblood Guard, though no Sunblood remained for her to protect. Raska led Lucan through the fortress to a small room above the training yard. Zareka had used it during her years as commander. Lucan expected weapons and campaign maps. Instead, he found a shelf of badly carved animals, a wooden horse with uneven legs, a bird whose wings were too thick, a small human figure wearing a cloak. Lucan picked up the figure. Raska explained that Zareka carved when she could not sleep. She was terrible at it. No one dared tell her. Lucan smiled before grief reached him. On the opposite wall hung a child's yellow ribbon from Reth Hollow. Beside it rested the broken buckle of the first prisoner Zareka secretly freed. A drawer held letters she never sent. Most were addressed to people she had failed, one to the family of the 16-year-old human prisoner who died on the frozen road, one to General Morgan after she discovered his family had been taken, one to Raska's mother explaining that Varokh had not become a coward by remaining in Ghorvak's army. He had become trapped. Raska said Zareka always remembered the people who disappeared inside official reports. Lucan sat beside the narrow window. He asked whether Zareka ever spoke of him. Raska looked toward the training yard. She said the princess spoke of Lucan too often and then ordered everyone to forget. Once, after returning from his house, Zareka made Raska stand beside a wall while she demonstrated how close she had been to the scholar. Raska asked whether Lucan seemed impressed. Zareka became angry and broke a practice spear. Lucan laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Raska's expression softened. She said Zareka later admitted the wall had been a mistake. She had never met a man who made refusal feel like respect rather than humiliation. Lucan looked at the badly carved human figure. Its head leaned slightly to one side. A tiny line had been cut across the jaw where his scar rested. Raska said Zareka carved it during the night before Iron Ford. She had already suspected he was more than a scholar. She did not know what. She only knew he made her want to become someone who could be trusted with the truth. Lucan's eyes filled. Raska did not look away. Among her people, grief was not shameful when carried for someone worthy. Before Lucan left, Raska gave him the small carved figure. He said it belonged in the fortress. Raska replied that Zareka had made it while thinking of him. That gave him the stronger claim. Lucan kept it beside the Crown Prince's signet for the rest of his life. Evelyne remained at the border during those months. Her father threatened to disinherit her for rejecting the forced marriage strategy and committing Caerwyn troops without approval. Eventually, she returned to Caerwyn to face him. King Edric received her in the same council chamber where she first learned to smile while men dismissed her. He did not rise when she entered. The council had already reviewed the cost of the war. Caerwyn lost soldiers, horses, and trade goods. Several ministers argued Evelyne had acted beyond her authority. Edric asked whether she regretted it. Evelyne placed Zareka's final written order on the council table. The document instructed rebel soldiers to protect Caerwyn civilians if the alliance failed. Zareka signed it before Blackstone. Evelyne said the Orc Princess prepared to protect Caerwyn, even while Caerwyn's king withheld reinforcements for marriage leverage. The chamber became still. Edric dismissed the ministers. Father and daughter remained alone. He asked whether Evelyne refused the marriage demand because Lucan did not love her. She answered that she refused because love demanded under threat was not love. Edric said kingdoms survived through imperfect bargains. Evelyne agreed. Then she said rulers had to know which bargains preserved a kingdom and which preserved only the ruler. Her father looked older than she remembered. He admitted he raised her to become useful because he feared a daughter without political value would be ignored after his death. Evelyne said he ensured she was valued by everyone except herself. The words wounded him. She did not take them back. Edric walked toward the window. He confessed that when reports of Blackstone arrived, he first calculated whether Carwyn gained enough influence to justify its losses. Then he read the list of dead. He found the name of a guard who served Evelyne since childhood. For the first time, the cost stopped being numbers. Evelyne asked whether that changed his judgment. Edric said it changed his certainty. He turned toward her. He did not apologize elegantly. He had never learned how. He said she acted like a ruler before he gave her permission to become one. Evelyne answered that permission was no longer what she wanted. She wanted his respect. Edric approached her. He took the blue royal chain from his own neck and placed it in her hands. The chain represented authority to negotiate in Carwyn's name without prior approval. He told her not to make him regret it. Evelyne closed her fingers around the metal. She said he probably would. A reluctant smile touched his face. It was not a complete reconciliation. Years of calculation did not disappear in one conversation. But when Evelyne left the chamber, her father walked beside her rather than sending her out alone. Lucan and Evelyne did not become lovers immediately. That restraint protected their future from feeling like a replacement. They worked together. They argued over grain prices, military roads, and refugee land. They traveled through burned villages. They listened to orc widows who distrusted human promises and human farmers afraid to return near Varokh patrols. Evelyne stopped using charm where clarity was required. Lucan stopped hiding behind diplomatic language when emotion deserved direct speech. They mourned Zareka differently. Lucan carried guilt. Evelyne carried the promise made beneath the broken platform. Whenever Lucan worked through several nights without rest, Evelyne removed the papers from his hands. The first time, he became angry. She reminded him that Zareka had warned her. Lucan laughed and cried in the same breath. That was the first moment grief began changing from an open wound into a scar. On the first anniversary of Blackstone Field, human and orc representatives gathered beneath the old pillars. A golden stone memorial stood beside the restored barrier. It carried Zareka's name. Below it was one orcish word, Varokh, strength that protects rather than dominates. Lucan placed the first treaty signed by the Mixed Council beneath the memorial. Evelyne placed Zareka's restored sword. Raska placed Varokh's iron key beside it for one night. General Korza stood with his 2 surviving children. The old baker from Reth Hollow brought a loaf shaped like a sun. This time, he placed it before Zareka's name instead of giving it to a princess who promised to return. They remained until sunset. After everyone else left, Evelyne told Lucan that part of his heart would always belong to Zareka. Lucan said love did not become false because death prevented its future. Evelyne agreed. She did not ask him to forget. That refusal to compete with memory completed the change Zareka had begun in her. Months later, Lucan asked Evelyne to walk beside the River Sorin. No guards followed closely. He wore no crown. Lucan told her he had spent years testing whether people valued him without a title. He now understood that hidden tests could become another form of control. A person could not ask for honest love while deciding which truths the other person received. Evelyne listened. Lucan said she first approached him through calculation. She admitted it. She tried to win him with gifts, influence, and desire. She admitted that too. Then he told her what mattered. She stayed after the calculation failed. She supported Zareka when Rivalry offered no reward. She risked her inheritance for civilians. She honored the woman who saved her. She loved Lucan through anger, truth, grief, and uncertainty. He asked her to become his wife, not to unite Cerwyn and Asteron, not to secure a road, not because she defeated a rival. He asked because his future felt more honest when imagined beside her. Evelyne cried before answering. She accepted. Their wedding took place at Greyhaven. Human and orc banners stood together. King Aldrin attended without a crown at Lucan's request. King Edric attended wearing the plain blue chain he once gave Evelyne, now returned as a sign that she entered the marriage with authority of her own. Representatives from Varokh carried Zareka's black and gold standard at the front. Raska carried it. General Korza walked behind her. Evelyne wore a small sun-shaped clasp at her shoulder. It belonged to Zareka. She wore it as remembrance, not victory. Lucan kept Zareka's carved human figure inside his coat. No one saw it. He felt its uneven edges against his chest when he took Evelyne's hand. Lucan became king 3 years later. Evelyne became queen beside him. Their marriage did not erase prejudice. Their reforms did not prevent every conflict. Mixed courts failed sometimes. Old hatred returned when harvests were poor or soldiers died. But fewer misunderstandings became graves. Every permanent border court required translators trained in both language and custom. Human scholars studied Orcish law. Orc mediators studied human inheritance. Systems village representatives received seats beside nobles. Refugee shelters were designed using the lessons learned in Greyhaven's wool warehouse. The reforms carried Zareka's name. Each spring, Lucan and Evelyne returned to Blackstone Field. Children placed yellow flowers beneath the Sunblood Memorial. Young warriors touched the stone before swearing protection. Oaths, princes were taught that titles could hide worth as easily as reveal it. Princesses were taught that desire without freedom became possession. One evening, Lucan and Evelyne remained after the visitors left. The sun lowered behind the ancient pillars. Evelyne rested her head against his shoulder. Lucan held her hand. Between them stood Zareka's memorial, lit by the last golden light. 2 princesses had once fought over a man they believed was only a scholar. One approached him through physical power and possessive desire. The other approached through charm, gifts, and political calculation. He rejected them. Because neither loved him freely, then the truth changed all 3. Zareka learned that love did not claim. Evelyne learned that love did not bargain. Lucan learned that love and could not be tested from behind a hidden crown. One princess gave her life so the others could live, but the others spent that life ensuring the sacrifice. Changed 2 kingdoms. Lucan had hidden his royal blood because he wanted someone to choose the man beneath the title. In the end, 2 women did. One became the great love he lost. The other became the partner who helped him carry that loss without being destroyed by it, and the crown he once feared became bearable because it was worn in a world their love, rivalry, truth, and sacrifice had helped remake. Would you have chosen Zareka's fearless love or Evelyne's patient loyalty? Share your choice in the comments and tell us which moment affected you the most. Subscribe to Orc Bond Saga for more emotional human-orc stories filled with hidden identities, forbidden love, sacrifice, and unforgettable bonds between 2 worlds.